More generally, a question being asked quite a lot at the moment is, who is this Labour government? We've had the big speech on immigration by the Prime Minister earlier in the week. What is your sense of where your old party has got to?
Well, there's been some sort of interesting, almost defining moments in this government's history. One is that in the budget they announced that there's going to be essentially a return to austerity by, yes, increasing health spending, but then cutting in almost every other department, including local government cuts that are now taking place. Then we had the $5 billion being taken out of personal independence payments. And then we had this enormous increase in defence expenditure from 2027 onwards of probably about $13 billion a year. These seem to me to be defining moments. And Starmer's speech about people being foreigners or unwelcome in their own land and so on is straight out of the Enoch Powell playbook. And I was asked a question about this by one of your colleagues, not your channel, another channel. And they said, well, what do you make of this? I said, well, I represent the neighbouring constituency to Keir Starmer. Demographically, broadly similar, multicultural, multilingual. Basically, people generally get along quite well together. What's the message that's been given to the people who've come to this country, work in health, work in education, work in transport, work in care particularly? And I asked Yvette Cooper this. There's 130,000 vacancies in the care sector already. What's she doing about those?
And he's absolutely right. He is absolutely right. I agree that I think that the Powellian language is going to rattle through these communities, you know? And whether or not it was only being done cynically to try and make the left look out of touch. Because if you look at the polling, people generally supported that language broadly, and it was really only the left that had some kind of opposition to this, the progressive left, which Jeremy, of course, has always been a figurehead for. He's always been somebody who supported migrants themselves. Like, when he was running to be Prime Minister, he said that he didn't like freedom of movement because it, in his words, allowed foreign workers to undercut workers' wages, although it allowed bosses to use them to undercut the wages. He impugned the bosses, not the migrants. I've already stated on this channel that I do not think that migration necessarily causes a dilution in wage bargaining, because broadly they affect both supply and demand, so there's only certain sectors that could apply to if they're oversubscribed by migrants, right? These are all nebulous issues, but the core of what he is bringing forward in terms of policy and rhetoric is a critique of the social impact of the language and the rhetoric that Keir Starmer was using. And that's why he's correct to impugn. I said this on Novara earlier this week, I will say it again today. This is the kind of language that is divisive. It is divisive, and if the political intention was to make the left get mad about it, that is being done so cynically, so cynically, whilst disenfranchising huge swathes of the population who are from migrant backgrounds, who aren't creating an island of strangers by their presence here. I said always that the economic reasons for the lack of interconnectedness, the lack of community, are patient zero. It's the lack of council housing, it's the lack of third spaces, the lack of investment in all of the places that we would usually go, youth clubs, youth centres, swimming pools, all these things that were sold off. All of these community areas that were sold off to private equity during the austerity period that have made us less connected, that have made us strangers to each other, right? It's an economic problem. Wages are depressed. It's a problem of the bosses who push them down. Even if migrants don't do it, which is my personal belief here. If we had proper sectoral bargaining rights that would protect people if certain sectors might be oversubscribed by a level of migration at the time. But what the message is being sent to these communities by the Starmer administration, that's the unforgivable part. Trying to make immigrants feel unwelcome by describing their time migrating here as a squalid chapter, describing them as doing incalculable damage, personally attacking the migrants themselves for damaging the country. That's actually the most damaging part of the speech, not necessarily the strangers comment, which, to be fair, was only a warning about what could happen rather than necessarily comment on what has happened. But he deliberately said that migration to this country had done incalculable damage and was a squalid period. What are the migrants themselves? What are migrants themselves who've come here to build a life, to come assimilate to the culture, to integrate and speak the language and contribute to our economy and help be part of our communities? What must they feel to be described as having done incalculable damage and being representative of a squalid period in the nation's history? That is what's so damaging. Those are his own constituents, as Jeremy correctly points out. Rhetoric is the major factor here. Most people want migration down, but that's fine. But it's the putrid way it's talked about that's causing these issues just to appease voters who hate them anyway. Exactly. The rhetoric is designed to both make the left look out of touch, which probably has been successful at doing, but also to signal to people on the right to vote for Labour, and they never will do. They never will do. Only 11% of Labour voters are even considering voting Reform UK. Reform UK draw their support mostly from the Tory vote and from non-voters. It's a real losing strategy, even outside of the awful way that it must make people from diverse communities think they are viewed by the population at large and the politicians too. Really, really dangerous for maintaining social cohesion. And he's right to mention the care sector as well. He's right to specifically mention the care sector because we're finding difficult to recruit in a place with loads of vacancies and unemployment is incredibly low. Who are we training up? How long will it take to train them? It's economic madness as well as having so many negative externalities in terms of social cohesion.
And yet, if you look back over the last few years, if you look at 2023, 1 million people net came into the country. Don't you understand there's an awful lot of people around who look at those numbers and think this is just too much?
Look at those numbers, and those numbers are never broken down, never analysed. They're not broken down into students, they're not broken down into people that are visiting, they're not broken down into returnees, and they're also, whilst some of the graduates coming in, doing PhDs and so on, are allowed to bring family, many care workers are not. And so what we're doing as a society, we're an ageing population that needs more and more people to work in, particularly these kind of jobs. So where's the future for us in all of this? This is a European-wide phenomena, a falling population, and the only way services can survive is actually if more people come in. Now, yes, you look at the headline figures, well, is the housing situation the fault of migrants, or is it the fault of public policy that hasn't invested enough in social housing?
It's exactly what Keir Starmer was saying. All of those years ago, during the leadership election, failing housing, falling wages, a lack of public investment, these were political failure, not the failures of migrants. And he was right to say that it was because it's fucking true. And now in 2025, he's completely forgotten the man that he was. It's almost like he was lying for people's votes. Because Keir Starmer is a liar. A proven morally corrupt serial liar, one might say. But he was right then. It just turns out it was all just lies trying to win the leadership rather than anything that he actually believed at the time. What was funny was Joe Coburn pulled up this quote on BBC Politics Live and then suddenly decided that by political failure, he meant it was political failure that people didn't understand the benefits of migration, and not political failure that we'd not invested in the public realm or in housing or in making sure that wages were rising rather than being stagnant. Those are the political failures he was referencing, and Joe Coburn just editorialised it to make a completely different point that he never made. Many universities are going to need a bailout or go under. They are in deep water this year with a simple drop in international student numbers. Yep, very, very true. And Jeremy was right again in that little bit there, talking about the fact that we don't break down the net migration figure into the large number of those that are students, and 80% of those don't stick around after 5 years anyway. They come here, they do their degree, and then they leave. And we take all of their foreign capital and use it to fund stuff in our own public realm.
Do you feel you don't recognise the Labour government that we've got now?
I find it very hard to, and I listen very carefully. And on the legislation they put through, some of which I've agreed with. I mean, I supported the Workers' Rights Bill. It's fine as far as it goes. It doesn't bring back bargaining by sector, which is what was key to the way of bringing up the worst conditions in the worst companies. So you have a sort of public transport sector and so on doing negotiations. But I supported the bill as far as it went. And likewise, the Renters Reform Bill. Yeah, I was absolutely delighted when they ended Section 21, no fault eviction. Delighted. But they just stopped short of saying we're actually going to control rent levels, which are a terrible problem. We have the most expensive housing in Europe. So I feel that when they do make progress, they just don't go far enough.
And again, Jeremy is absolutely right in saying that what legislation we do have just doesn't go far enough. Okay, we're doing some things like giving renters some more rights. Well, these are broadly fine, but when are we going to get some actual rent controls and make these things affordable? It's okay to not get kicked out, but you're going to have to leave if you can't afford the rent, right? When it comes to employment rights, like, it's only exploitative zero-hour contracts that are getting banned, not all zero-hour contracts, which leaves this open to some level of coercion to take one even when you don't want one. When it comes to rail nationalisation, sure, we're bringing the franchises in very slowly, but the rolling stock, that's staying privatised. So many near misses in terms of making actually good policy, whilst being ruined by some poor macroeconomic decisions and some genuinely terrible welfare cuts and some awful, awful social policy as well. He's totally right to make these criticisms of the Labour government and how it just doesn't go far enough at dealing with the myriad problems of this society. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.